Hello, everyone. This is Lila Talks, and it is the 2024 presidential election season. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. I am one of the co-leaders of the Habeshas for Harris national campaign, which is tied to the official campaign. We recently had an amazing town hall with a panel of experts covering an array of topics. Now, I pass it off to Mena Demesi, our fearless founder of Habeshas for Harris.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. For those who don't know me, I'm Dr. Mena Demese. I am leading this initiative with an amazing group of leaders across the country, some who you know very well. You'll be part of a series of different conversations. We have folks still joining us, but if you're tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to share this with your friends and family in real time. We are here for the next 2 hours talking about everything from immigration and foreign policy to healthcare and the economy and education. And for those who don't know, just a few months ago, a group of us came together across the country, organizers, grassroots mobilization, and we came together to support Eritrean and Ethiopian Americans across the country. We have been on the road, we have been in the community, we have been doing phone banking, we have been activating across the country and organizing for our community. And so one of the things I want to share with you is a picture, a team photo, so you have an idea. Actually, we'll probably come back to it so we can start off with level setting for today, because this is history for us. It's an opportunity for us to organize and also represent the interests that we believe in. So with that, I want to turn it over to Debbie Alamrew. Many of you know her. She is an awesome spoken word poet. She has been doing spoken word across the country. She just released an album called Uncovering Me, which has been submitted for a Grammy nomination. And I want to thank her because everything she embodies is the beauty of our community and the ability for us to be seen and heard. And so with that, I'm going to add her to this conversation. And Debbie, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for that introduction. Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'll get straight to it. This poem I wrote is titled, Your Vote Matters. Vote like your life depends on it. I hope that the gravity of that statement is felt heavily on your shoulders, for the privilege of that right was burdened by ancestors who died in the fight. May the importance of your voice not be lost amongst the deafening chaos of our nation. Your choice has the power to affect change for generations. Do not take that lightly. For you could cost us infinitely. You see, we live in a country that was never built for us to win. Drastically changing the equation of this nation is where we must begin. As long as we are absent from positions of power, we are puppets to the puppet master. So now, here in this crucial hour, the importance of being informed is at an all-time high. The irony of Make America Great Again is that America isn't great yet. Until we are all seen through the same lens, then you can bet we will be viewed as second-class citizens in the eyes of the law. A promised land, filled with empty promises. Don't you underestimate the weight that your single vote holds. See, the people who can control what happens in this country are all elected. So much is counting on you. The future of reproductive freedom, this country's economy, education policy, our democracy. Don't take this lightly. Play your hand and play it right. This is not a game. This is a fight. And your vote is your weapon. So when your opponent is armed with artillery, you do not show up empty-handed. So vote like your life depends on it, because it does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Debbie. Appreciate you.
Of course, my pleasure.
All right. So today we're going to, as I mentioned, go over a number of issues. And you're gonna hear from Galila, who is also on our national campaign. She'll also talk to us about the survey results, and I mentioned these other issues that you're going to also be hearing about today. But first, I want to give a huge shout out to our national campaign committee across the country. We are officially with the campaign for Harris and Walz. These folks you see here have been working really hard. They have been representing our community and interests, talking to folks across the country, and also diving in deep with the issues that matter for us. So big shout out to all of them. You'll get a chance to learn about the work they've been doing over the course of these past few months. We have 8 days, just 8, y'all, until the election. We hope you all have voted already. You still have an opportunity to vote early. And then, of course, on election day. Like I said, this campaign, this initiative is multifaceted. So while we've been doing the work, we also have been raising funds. So thank you to all of you on this call who have donated to us. We are almost at our goal of 10,000. As you know, our donations also support down ballot races for people that we know who are running for office, and some on this call who will soon be running for Senate and Congress very soon in the House. So with that, I'm gonna also turn it over now to someone who's been working very hard representing all of our interests, as well as the interests of the African diaspora. And many of you know her very well. Her name is Semhar Araia. She's the founder and CEO of the Diaspora Academy. She is someone who's been doing so much for our community for over 2 decades now, and is working hard and strong to represent the interests of our community. So I'm going to turn it over to her for some comments. Thank you so much, Semhar.
Thank you, Mena, and thank you, Habeshas for Harris, for hosting this event, inviting me to be a part of it, inviting so many of us to be a part of it. I want to first say from the outset that organizing is never easy, and what your group has done in mobilizing people and what you continue to do is extremely important. And I would say to all of you that are watching this right now, bear in mind that how many times do we get groups that focus on Eritreans and Ethiopians in the US? How many groups are there that are you? Consider supporting Habeshas for Harris, helping mobilize, helping volunteer, and also think about what you can do in your own community. Now, I know for some Eritreans and Ethiopians, you may not think this is for you, but it is, because your rights, your lives, no matter where you live in this country, will be affected by this election. So it's 2024, and some of you have been through a few election cycles. You have watched us organize on previous campaigns. You have been a part of mobilizing people for one party or the other, but this election is different, and I want you to understand why. Not only is this vote about making your voice heard for the outcome of the presidential election, your senators, your congressional representatives, your local leaders, but this is also about really shaping the future of this country, the country that you moved to, the country that your family moved to, the country that you may have just arrived to and you're looking forward for the next 20, 30 years. The vote you cast on November 5, or now until November 5, because early voting is available, the vote you cast will literally shape decades of policy on your day-to-day life with your education, your job opportunities, your tuition loan repayments, your immigration status, your opportunities for other relatives to come as immigrants, your opportunity to engage in this community as a member of civil society will be severely impacted by this election. And that's why I, along with so many others, are organizing in support of Kamala Harris. Because those things I just mentioned, along with so many other issues that affect your day-to-day life, have a plan for progress, for protection, and for safety under Kamala Harris's vision. Now, if you are on the fence, or maybe you think you don't want to vote, or maybe you might vote third party, because that's also an option for some of you, I want you to know that failing to vote or voting third party is a vote for Donald Trump. And a vote for Donald Trump means a regression, a backsliding of every single piece of life you're enjoying right now. Your movement, the law enforcement's ability to track yourselves, immigration laws over who can stay or who should come or how you live. You know, there's proposals of mass deportations. There's proposals of people being sent to countries that they don't live, they're not from. There's proposals of tracking women's health appointments. There's proposals that are so invasive and, quite frankly, frightening that what you vote on November 5 will determine truthfully your life and your children's life. Imagine if we were to have a Donald Trump presidency, one of the first things they're going to do is appoint new Supreme Court judges, because there's a position that they've already expressed that they would replace some of the judges that are near retirement. And we know that this would create an opportunity for more conservative judges. Okay, I can help you. Come here, honey. See, this is what I'm thinking about. Come over. A Supreme Court judge that's conservative means that all of your freedoms will even be more, constrained. So everything from your ability to move, your ability to explore, your ability to leave the country, your ability to come back, all of these elements will be affected. Lastly, when you vote for third party, I understand the reasoning and the logic, because you may not be happy with the two-party system. And you may believe that we need to completely rehaul the system. And while that may be the case, you may believe in that so strongly, the time to do it is after the vote. The time to do it is after November 5, because what you want an administration that you can either hold to account, that you can engage with, and that you can track what they're doing. None of those options will be available under a Trump presidency. So voting third party becomes a vote for Trump. And I would tell you, I respect the Republican Party as a two-party system in this country. I respect differing views, but we're not having a vote about one party or the other. We're having a vote that either preserves and maintains the landscape of life as we know it right now, or we vote for a drastic backsliding that will particularly affect Black, Brown, African, immigrant communities, that will particularly affect those of us that have maybe so many stories of trauma and suffering that we've already gone through, and we're living in a country that is telling us, if you Google Project 2025, telling us what that will be. And when you look at what Project 2025 is focused on, it's on holding your life back, making the richer get rich, the poor get poor, and it's limiting the diversity and beauty of this country. So I want you to take it seriously, and I want you to go vote. Now, on a positive note, guess what? You can actually vote right now. So some of you have already done early voting. I voted 2 days ago. I'm thrilled. But your state most likely has early voting as an option. We do have a list of all of the states and what dates early voting begins. But in most cases, you can find that out. Go to iwillvote.com. It'll tell you your state, and you can find early voting. The other thing is you can go on my Instagram, and I have all the dates for you. But remember, your power is in your vote, it's in your voice, it's in how you show up. And you have the power to shape and dictate the rest of your life with this vote. Don't underestimate the power of the moment that we're in. Don't think you won't be affected. Don't think you can only vote for one issue, like your business, or you want a tax cut, or you want some benefit. You got to be sure that you're looking at the big picture. So I'm really thankful for this space. I am here for all of our people, all of us that are a part of a diaspora, but especially Eritrean and Ethiopian communities. We have gone through enough in our own respective communities, in our own respective lives and histories. And this is the time that we need to show up. So let's go. Let's move forward. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Beautiful. Thank you, Semhar. We appreciate you so much. I want to now bring to the spotlight two of another amazing leader of ours, Lila Sabatu, who will talk more about what our survey results are. I do want to share too, guys, that we've been doing a lot. We're on social media. Shout out to Galila Kabeda. We've been doing interviews on radio. We did one today in Atlanta. Shout out to Betty Fleming, Bird Bayou, Noel Goitom, Solomon Ayalo. We also have been doing phone banking, and I do want to say something really important about this. For those who don't know, right, the government has a list, right? We have a list of all voter data. It's not disaggregated by ethnicity. And so we are one of the first groups to ever be able to do phone banking to our own community in Georgia and Nevada. Why? Well, first, I want to give out shout out to people like Mike and Dala and Amaha Casa, who, when they're not doing their day jobs, they are coming up with algorithms and ways to extract data of our community so that we can actually make the call. A lot of you have heard me talk about across the country, even about the census, that since 1790, the census did not allow for Black people in the United States to identify by their ethnicity. And that changed as recently as 2020, right? That was the first time that you could fill out the census and examples were given. You know, you could say you're Black and you can write you're Haitian, Ethiopian, Eritrean, Jamaican, or what have you. And so our country is catching up to us. It's really not the other way around. But it's important that we organize in ways that amplify our visibility, especially when institutions and systems don't allow for us to be seen. So because of our own work and our own effort, people like Bert, Amaha, Mike, and Dala, we were able to come up with an opportunity to really have conversations with our people about the issues that matter. And it's been really inspiring and empowering, but it also suggests that there's a lot more work to be done because there are a lot of us across the country that don't get those conversations, are not seen, right? Are untapped communities that are making huge economic contributions to society. And so this is the start of more that will come. And with that, I want to turn it over to Galila to talk more about our work.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So first things first, we want to kind of talk about some of the accomplishments that we've made so far. We've had a lot of different in-person events. Hopefully you've been able to attend. If not, we're glad that you're here so we can share the same information we've been providing. So we had 3 DC events. We had one in Atlanta, one in Ohio, and we actually do plan to do some canvassing in Georgia and Philly, Pennsylvania shortly, like the next week. So we're really still trying to push and move forward. If you're interested in participating in any of these activities, whether phone banking or getting more involved canvassing, please add something to the chat. We definitely want to hear from you. And please follow us on our social media at Habeshas for Harris, TikTok, Instagram. We even have a Facebook page. Share that with your family and friends. Just to note that on our first post in September 4th, our reach across all socials was about 22,000 people, unique people. So we're really happy. And this just shows the energized movement that everyone has for this effort. And so now I think Mena kind of mentioned that we have this survey that we've been working on. And so let me show some of the results. We have about 160 people who have filled it out. And I'm going to go break down a little bit more of the details. Okay, so we've asked a variety of different questions, but we're just going to highlight about 4. So for example, we asked them, are you affiliated with any particular political party? And we have about 70% were Democrat, 24% independent, and about 2.5% Republican, and then the rest identified as other. Okay. Next, we asked the question, what is your age? And if you look here, the majority of our participants were about between the ages of 35 to 44 years old. Next, about 25 to 34. And then the next age group was 45 to 54 years old. But again, we still have if you see, it's like a nice little bell curve for you folks who are in academia, as far as a good distribution of representation from all groups from 18 years old all the way to 60 years old. So we've been capturing that. Next. Okay, this was really interesting, folks, right? So we asked, what are the top 3 issues you believe are most important for Eritrean and Ethiopian Americans that are first, second, and third generation living in the U.S.? And it kind of was going back and forth with a few of the top 3, but it was quite interesting. If you see, the economy is number 1. You see healthcare as number 2 as far as 19%. And then we have immigration policy, which is about, 19%. We have all these other things like education, which is important. We also have racism. And so you can kind of see across the board, what's going on. And so, yes, the Habesha community, we're very unique, but this also kind of reflects what Americans overall are feeling, right? When you watch CNN, MSNBC, or your, outlet of choice, these are kind of the things that people care about. And so as you kind of go through this town hall, and there's going to be certain issues that are really important to you, just keep in mind that there's so many things that we need to consider when we cast our vote. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And so those are the survey questions that we have. Hopefully it was helpful, and let us know if you have like any questions or anything like that.
Great.
Back to you, Mena.
Thank you.
That's good.
All right, guys. Next, I am going to shift the discussion to immigration and foreign policy. You're going to hear from 2 important scholars and experts that are, and maybe we can spotlight them both. Lila, if you can help me with that, and hear from them to talk about the issues that matter to us. Now, a lot of us are having different conversations in our communities, in our homes, and so we want to, really have a conversation here from 2 experts who have spent their careers working on political behavior, both of the Black diaspora, but also across the country, as well as within their respective communities. So with that, I welcome Dr. Niambi Carter. Many of you know her, professor at University of College Park, also author of American While Black, African Americans, Immigration and the Limits of Citizenship, as well as Dr. Christina Greer, professor at Fordham University, author of Black Ethnics, and many of you seen her on several media outlets, CNN, MSNBC, also very much invested in our community. So thank you both for joining us. I want to cut right to the chase here. We know that a majority of our community have immigrated to the United States. And while there are strong opinions about foreign policy, what do you both think our community should know about what they are up against as Black immigrants living in the United States? Any of you can take that first.
I mean, I'll start. I think one of the things, well, first, let me say thank you for having both of us. I certainly enjoy dialoguing with you all, but I think we have to remember that when we are talking about Black migrants, they're disproportionately going to experience hyper surveillance. So just because people are from another country does not mean that American style racism doesn't apply to them. So if they are considered Black, which most of them are, they are more likely to have interactions with the police. And when we think about the fact that at least 20% of non-citizens that are facing deportation for criminal matters is Black, I think this is more something people should be concerned about more because they're facing more policing, more detention. They also have higher bonds if they're granted bond at all when they are in detention. And I would say the fact that you have a former president who's running again, who is making it a cornerstone of his political agenda to mass deport immigrants. And I can't imagine that people who are classed as Black in this country will be at the front of that line. And when you consider the prominence of Ethiopian communities in this country, particularly in certain regional places like Maryland and DC and others, that those folks won't be spared in that.
Yep. Great point.
Yeah, I'll pick up where Niambi left off. First, thanks so much for having us, Mena, and thank you for all the hard work that you do and have done and continue to do.
Can you turn up your volume a little bit more too?
Sure.
We want to hear you loud and clear.
Is this better?
Yes.
Hopefully so. So I just want to say thank you all for having us. But to to add on to what Niambi has laid out in her award-winning book, I should add, American While Black, and my award-winning book, Black Ethnics, we come together and actually try and have this real conversation. We're having it right now where Donald Trump is currently at Madison Square Garden in New York City right now, having a cosplay of a Nazi rally from 1939. This is not a drill. No one will be spared. And so I think some people think, well, I'm not that type of immigrant, or, he's not really looking at me. We're established. It doesn't matter. We know that this man has sunk every single business he's ever had, and he left the country hanging off a financial cliff. You can blame it on COVID or not, but for small business owners across the country, for people who work in corporations across the country, for people who care about education, we know Project 2025, the first thing on the chopping block is the education department. So all the things that we care about as Black people collectively are on the chopping block. And so when we think about first generation all the way to 10th generation, no Black person will be spared from the ire of a Donald Trump presidency, because it's not just Donald Trump. It is the bottom of the barrel of the individuals that we will have surrounding him. As Semhar laid out, there is a need for a robust two-party system where we can come to the table and have good faith arguments. However, we're not dealing with that party anymore. We're dealing with people who don't see immigrants as human, who don't see Black people as human. And so good-leaning Republicans have long since left the Trump administration, and we're dealing with the bottom of the barrel type of folks who are we had a smash and grab the first time around. This will be a methodical dismantling of democracy and all the things that we've worked very hard for. So when we think about the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the 1965 Immigration Act, we look at them as a triumvirate of acts. They are all being dismantled by a Trump administration. They will be dismantled. And so as Black women who serve as the canaries in the mine, who warn us about the dangers ahead, we must take it seriously, because Donald Trump has been running around the country for months now, detailing what he plans to do. And we cannot assume that it will be other people who will be victims of this. All of us will be affected, whether it's economics, education, the environment, the list goes on and on and on, especially if we think about the first order of business from Donald Trump when he became president the first time was the Muslim ban. And we know that it will not stop there.
Yeah, I mean, great points to both of you. And let's unpack this a little bit more, because I would love to connect the scholarship from your research and your books to the current kind of political climate that Ethiopian and Eritrean immigrants and African diaspora are facing, right? I mean, we have single issue voters on this call and tuning in, right? Who care perhaps primarily about just U.S. foreign policy, and they have negative opinions about that, or they're thinking about in the plethora of issues that affect women's health, they're only focused on abortion, right? Or they're only thinking about how their school environment and the education their kids are going to be exposed to. How do you and then of course within the context of Black political behavior, we also know that we operate we go to the ballot box thinking about our whole community. How do you take that up against the fact that we have some folks with some very strong opinions? I'll start. In the case of U.S. Africa foreign policy, I mean, we have seen dramatic shifts from a humanitarian-based approach to more investment now in FDI. We've also seen the rise of a diaspora that has gone back to the continent to invest and to advocate, right? And I think the ways in which our people come to this country tell you something about how they feel about their home country, and then the expectations they have for U.S. policy to sort of step in the gap and fix the problem, if you will. And my sense is more that in the American polity, it's not only okay, I almost think it's essential to have diverse opinions, right? And so you can have these hardcore opinions on a few issues, but to both of your comments, how do we ensure that people are going to the ballot box thinking about their whole lived experience and be willing to actually vote on that, as opposed to some very strong opinions on a few issues?
I think that's hard. I mean, people really are not required, right, to have more issues or to think more broadly. But I would say for Black people, we've had no choice, right, but to think bigger about our experience at the ballot box, because we don't experience discrimination as individuals. We experience it as a community. And I think, Christina hit it right on the head when she talked about how the Civil Rights Act and the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 working together along with the Civil Rights Act. That's about kind of a broadening of an understanding of a Black struggle that included those international elements, right? So I think when people go to the ballot box, you can think about it a little bit like going to McDonald's. There's a big menu of things, and we don't all like the same things. I want to eat a quarter pounder. I think the fish sandwich is disgusting. But just because I like the quarter pounder doesn't mean that other people who like the fish sandwich shouldn't have an opportunity to eat that fish sandwich. So I think about voting that way. You can have the issues that you care most about and that you want to see, but it doesn't mean that we get to use our vote to as a sort of cudgel, as a way to beat another person out of their options, right? So I think about we don't have to eat everything that's on the table. We don't have to like everything. That's not the requirement. But in this particular moment, right, when we don't have the benefit of the politics as usual that we had even 10 years ago, the choices could not be more stark. We are not choosing between people who are equal. We are choosing between someone who has told us he wants to be a dictator on day one. We are choosing between someone who said that he does not see any quarter for, say, refugees. And if we're paying attention to international politics, we know the reason that most of the people are leaving their home countries now is because of climate. And we don't even acknowledge climate as a reason for people to flee, right? So when we think about climate related disasters that have racked not just the world, but our own country, and they're going to increase and put more pressures for people all around the world to migrate and have to get somewhere else. And we have a person who doesn't see the value in that, who wants to be most punitive where immigrant communities are concerned, where minoritized communities are concerned. And I don't mean just Black and brown people. I also mean LGBTQIA plus people. They are part of our communities too. Women, right? Even if I don't like the way someone lives or the choices that they make, doesn't mean that I want to, and I shouldn't want to diminish their humanity. And I think choosing a Donald Trump presidency not only diminishes the humanity of ourselves, but also the humanity of other people, people who may be less able to fight or less able to resist. And I think about our voice, our vote, as an opportunity to do more to help the least of us, right? And not harm. And at the very least, we can do no harm. And I think Dr. Greer has made some excellent points about like voting as a harm mitigation tactic, not just about getting more. It's sometimes just keeping things as is so that things don't get worse. And unfortunately, sometimes we have to do that.
And I'll just quickly add, thank you, Nyambi. We've talked about this in many venues. Black people have had to be strategic, Mena, and very rarely have we ever had an ideal choice, a perfect candidate. I always have my students think about who's your favorite president, because I want them to see how someone can be so flawed and also great at the same time. I love LBJ because of the Civil Rights Act, the Immigration Act, and Voting Rights Act. Don't talk to Vietnam veterans about LBJ, right? So like it is complicated. But I also, in this moment, we don't have the luxury to be a single issue voter. We just don't. And so when I think about who I want to be in opposition to in certain times, a Donald Trump presidency, he's been very clear. I don't want to hear from journalists. I want to jail you. I don't believe in sanctuary cities. I don't want to protect you. I want to actually try and deport as many people as possible. I don't care about the economic repercussions or the family repercussions. We still don't understand the damage that was done the first time around through a Donald Trump presidency with immigration and the separation of families. We still don't fully understand the economic damage that was done. We're just now getting food recalls because of the lax sort of laws that he put in place for the FDA and the EPA, and why it is that grocery stores are now like, oh, right, our factories aren't safe. These are past policies. So as we think about the holistic picture that Nyambi laid out, sometimes I have to think about, my life is pretty great in Brooklyn for now, right? But I'm actually going to the polls for that woman in Alabama or that immigrant community in Ohio that actually doesn't have as much power as me as a Black woman in Brooklyn, who's in a relatively blue city. We all know, a little shaky, right? In a relatively blue state. But I have to think about what down the line does the collective Blackness look like? Collectively for Black people. This is what I talk about in Black ethnics. What are the issues that we can come together on? And it's like, I don't have a mixed status family. However, I have to vote thinking about my friends and strangers who are in mixed status families. I'm tenured. I don't work an hourly wage. I have to worry about an economic sphere that actually protects working wage, hourly wage workers and union workers. I have to think not just about 2024, about what my country and my city will look like in 2034. You know, we had Hurricane Sandy in New York for the people on the call who are from New York. However, I need to think about the people who live in North Carolina and Florida and our coastal regions and communities that are affected by climate change, and not just climate refugees coming to the United States, but we're about to start seeing our own version of climate refugees within the United States. That's why I'm going to the polls. And if there's a administration that I feel like could listen and has indicated that they are willing to at least come to the table in a good faith effort, it is, as Niambi has laid out, a clear choice that it is that Harris-Walz administration that is at least willing to have a conversation about certain things that I disagree with them on, as opposed to a Trump-Vance administration that has already made up their mind about who they think Black people are, who they think immigrants are, who they think women are, who they think young people are, who they think this country is, and sort of the vision that they have looks a lot like a vision from the 1820s that did not involve us in any way in a productive manner coming to the table as equals.
Yeah. I mean, amen to both of what you said. I think what's really important for our community to know is that, and you touched on this, Dr. Greer, right? I mean, a party doesn't have to be perfect for you to vote for it, right? I think all of this, and we're political scientists, so we get it, right? We study this all the time, and we understand that you can be an agitator from the outside, and there's a value proposition there. And then there are people who are working from the inside like us, right? Holding your party accountable doesn't mean that there's only one way to do it, right? It's all important. So you can feel a type of way about what's happening in Israel-Palestine, and that doesn't negate or diminish your ability to also, play a role in helping the party get to where you want to see it, right? And we also don't want to dismiss, because we all know protest politics is about agitation from the outside and the inside. And I think it's all part of the structure. We need everybody. And to your point, both of your points, we believe, right? When you talk about democracy in the Democratic Party in particular, you could just look at the DNC and see, I saw people in that audience that looked like us, right? Like literally and figuratively, right? Folks like Semhar on the front lines. There are a lot of us out here. You're going to hear from Awad Iyasu, who's been doing amazing work getting elected. Maybe we'll have him be senator of Georgia one day, right? But I mean, we're here. And so to your point, to not really go to the ballot box with one issue, but understand what is happening with your everyday lives. For instance, diversity visas on the chopping block with Trump. And Africans are the highest beneficiary of that category. And people say, oh, well, he's just saying that. Like he just said Haitians eat cats and dogs. But, I'm from Ohio, and, they had to shut the schools down, right? Yes, and so a friend and colleague said, oh, wait till they find out that Habeshas eat kutfo. If Trump gets word of that and says something, we're going to be on the chopping block next. And in 2020, he actually did, right? He did while we were organizing for Biden and Harris, these flippant comments. It's not just about him. It's about the base of people that actually believe every word coming out of his mouth and acting on that. And so I think we have a responsibility to respect everyone's position and opinion, right? You can have those strong single issue positions, but know that we actually need your vote for the community. We need it for folks in Nevada and Georgia, but also from New York to Florida, right? We need it for the people back home, the families you're trying to bring to, family reunification, huge part of how Ethiopian and Eritrean Americans have created communities here. We are going to have a very draconian type of immigration policy. While we're talking about all these issues over here, you're spending your days trying to get your relatives to come, and that's not going to be an option anymore. And so I think we need to think about about everything, and also recognize just how different these candidates are. This is not, we've never kind of experienced this in quite this way. So yes, go ahead, Dr. Carter.
I was just going to say, and two, when you brought up that, it made me remember about DC, right? DC has been a sanctuary city since the 1980s under Marion Barry, and I think that's very important to say. But this city does not run itself. DC has home rules. Congress actually runs DC, and they have made it clear that they want to be more involved in the workings of the District of Columbia. And we can think about what this means to Habesha communities in this area in particular. DC is a very important locus for that community, as a place to live, work, be educated, and own business. So if we start thinking about the stakes for that city, which is very unique, it's not Maryland, it's not Virginia, it doesn't have a governor, right? It's not a sovereign. I think those stakes also need to be made clear to people that if you live in DC proper, um, the Trump administration has made it clear that they want to go after DC in particular for all of the freedoms, not just around immigration, but also around abortion and other things. Juvenile justice, right? They want more of a crackdown in juvenile justice. So I just want people to know that the stakes in the District of Columbia are even higher because it's not a safe place in the same way.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, home to one of the largest populations outside.
Absolutely.
Right. So very important. Well, thank you both for the work you do, for your leadership and advocacy for our community. You're doing this every day. You're teaching young kids, and we appreciate you for making space in our classrooms to talk about people like us. When again, we have a candidate who wants to eliminate the courses that we all teach, right? To teach our history. It's important, right? First, second, third generation, Ethiopian Eritreans, Ethiopians, right? We want our kids to be proud of who they are, go to the classroom and feel like there's a history and story that they're included in. So I think there's just so much happening here, but I really appreciate your guys' insights. Thank you so much. And we're going to close the conversation here and turn to our next speaker. So thank you guys so
very
much.
Keep fighting.
Yep. All right. Thank you. All right, folks, we are going to go on to our next speaker here. We have quite a treat for you. Many of you have your eyes on Georgia, as you should. And if you don't know this amazing person right here, she goes by the name of Dr. Jeanine Abrams Mclean, joining us from the state of Georgia, democracy champion and entrepreneur. She has been on the front lines for our community. We go way back working on the census and all of this, but she's speaking in her personal capacity. If she looks kind of familiar, yes, it's because she is Stacey Abrams' sister. And so we appreciate your leadership. Thank you, Dr. Abrams Mclean, for all that you do. And of course, happy and honored to have you join us today. So we'll turn it over to you for your comments. And you're coming from a place where a lot of our people are as well. So
yeah. Yes. So much, Minna. I'm excited to be here today. And thank you to Habeshas for Harris for having these discussions. I'm learning so much today, and this has been just already such a wonderful conversation. As you've all heard, there's a little election happening right now. And once again, the state of Georgia is on everybody's mind. So I want to take a few minutes to talk about something monumental, something that rewrote Georgia's history, and in many ways, America's history. I'm talking about the shift of Georgia turning blue in 2020 and the critical role that Black communities, obviously including Ethiopian and Eritrean communities and all communities of color, played in making that transformation possible in 2020 and hopefully maintaining it in 2024. So we've all heard that elections are won on the margins, but what does that really mean? In my mind, it means that in close races, every single vote matters, especially those in communities that have been systemically sidelined and suppressed. And in Georgia, Black folks have often been on those margins. We're the people on those margins. We've been the difference makers, the swing voters in a place where the stakes have always been high. We're the voters who stand in line for hours, who face barriers to access, who have been systematically targeted by voter suppression and disinformation tactics. Yet we continue to show up because we know that our votes matter And it's often our votes that decide the outcome of these really close races. And there's a lot of attention placed on the Atlanta metro area. I live in Tucker, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta and Decatur. But one thing I want everybody to understand, especially as we're thinking about outreach and thinking about mobilizing people in Georgia and in other states, is that there are powerful voices all across the state and all across this country that demand to be heard. So I don't want folks to, if you know somebody in a rural community, a cousin or a friend, I need you to keep them in mind when we're talking about getting out the vote as well. So nobody can talk about Georgia turning blue without mentioning Stacey Abrams. I'm always going to talk about her for two reasons. One, she's my sister and one of the baddest women I have ever met. And two, Stacey saw early on the importance of mobilizing people who had for so long had not been able to participate fully in our democracy. She started more than a decade ago. And I bring that up because this is work. This didn't just 2020 didn't just happen overnight, right? She was working tirelessly through grassroots organizing, mobilizing communities, and building networks of activists and advocates. She created the Fair Fight in 2018, determined not to leave others vulnerable to voter suppression. And because of that long-term vision, we saw Georgia make history in 2020, with voters from every community standing together to demand change. And this year, we have to keep that same energy. And the Ethiopian and Eritrean communities in Georgia are essential to this movement. You bring your voices, your votes, and your visions for a better future. I know many of you, like my own Habesha friends and neighbors, see firsthand how this election impacts not only Georgia and the US, but abroad. That's why it's essential that we work to get out the vote for Vice President Kamala Harris in this election. As one of my Ethiopian friends told me the other day, she said, we can't afford to be complacent. At least in a Harris administration, there will be allies and community influence. And then she said, with a Trump administration, the community has no allies and zero ability. What she meant is that this election, and you've already heard this tonight, is that this election is about ensuring that we have leaders who listen, who care, and consider the needs of all communities at home and abroad. Our votes are our voice, not only here in Georgia, but for those who can't vote, but who will still feel the ripple effects of our choices. So as we approach this critical election, let's remember that every single vote counts. If Georgia showed us anything in 2020, it's that our voices are powerful enough to make history and bring about real change. I urge each of you to vote for Vice President Kamala Harris and to keep reaching out to friends, family, and neighbors across Georgia and across the country. I'm fielding calls and we have 8 days and I'm still working to talk to convince people to participate and to make sure that their voices are heard. So I need you to talk to that cousin who says he's not going to vote for whatever conspiracy reason he came up with. I need you to keep pressing that friend who says she doesn't like either candidate, so she's going to stay at home. You have to remind them and keep on them to make a plan to vote. Let them know that early voting in Georgia ends this Friday, November 1st, and that election day is November 5th. And my charge to you, everybody on this call, regardless if you're in Georgia or anywhere else across this country, is to encourage, outside of your cousins and your friends, but encourage 3 other people that you know to make their voices heard. Encourage them to get to the polls, to cast their ballots, because this race is tight. And again, every single vote will count. So I want to thank you for standing up. Thank you in advance for standing up, for using your voice, for wielding your power and your influence, and for building a better future for all of us. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Minna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abrams Mclean. We appreciate you. Thank you for your comments and the good work that you're doing. We appreciate you. We are going to keep this momentum going. I have the pleasure of now turning us to, you know her well, and she's the first Ethiopian American female woman state senator from the great state of New York. Can see her here. State Senator Samra, thank you so much for joining us. You have been doing amazing things in New York, and you are representing so many issues. You chair the Mental Health Committee, but I just want to thank you for being a leader that we can see ourselves in. You've made history at the same time. You're busy at work every day, and this is a critical election for our community. So first, on behalf of all of us, thank you for being you. Thank you for doing the great work of serving as a state senator. And just FYI for everyone, because history matters. We know that she's the second of Ethiopians. Alexandra Assefa from Nevada was also a state senator, but she's the first woman state senator and the first one from New York, from our community. So over to you, Senator Brouk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mana. And thank you to everyone, our entire Habesha community. I have to start because I didn't know who I'd be speaking after. And we just got to start all of us to know, even my journey started with Stacey Abrams. So she changed the course of history, but it was also her race that I went down to Georgia from New York in 2018 after meeting her and said, I got to work on this campaign. And she was such an inspiration to see that people like me could be in positions like this, because she started as a state legislator, as everyone knows. And so just know, and please take the message back to your sister, that the ripple effects continue with, I think, especially Black women knowing that we can do this. And when I told her I was running, she said, you're going to win. And I said, okay, if Stacey Abrams says it, it must be true. So I'm just so grateful to be here. So yes, I'm Samra Brouk. I'm proud to represent up here in Rochester, New York, and upstate New York, to holding it down for our community, second generation Ethiopian. And for me, I think of these things in a lot of different ways. I think about what a Harris presidency means to me as a second generation Ethiopian. I think about what it means as someone with parents who are aging and grandparents who are aging, and what they're going to need from me and from our community. I think about it as a young Black woman, right, living in this country. I think about my 2-year-old daughter, Lila, and what this means for her and what it means for her future. And of course, I think about it as a state legislator and what it means for my ability to serve the people who have elected me to this job and make sure that I'm able to deliver on those things. So I wanted to share a quick story with you all around what it means for some of your state legislators to have a Harris presidency instead of a Trump presidency. So of course, it's about their platforms. Of course, it's about what they aim and promise to do and their plans for our country. But it's also about how they're going to deliver for our everyday needs. And in so many states, it's us as state legislators who are tasked with fixing the roads, making sure our healthcare systems stay afloat, making sure our schools are educated, making sure that curriculum are not getting gutted because they don't want to include Black history or African history anymore in their curricula. And so recently I was invited over to the White House to have a conversation around childcare here in New York. And when you looked around, what you saw was so many legislators from all over the country. I actually had my daughter with me because I didn't have any childcare for her at the time. And we had these conversations around what the federal government needed to do to support the states to be able to deliver for our constituents, right? And so things like that, being invited in to inform what policies should look like, actually changed the laws here in New York. By having those conversations with senior White House officials, we were able to actually change laws here in New York State around more people having access to this child care support that they needed. It's allowing more people to go to work, more people to finish their schooling, more people to come back to work after leaving to have a child. And it were these small tweaks that if we didn't have the federal government supporting this, we wouldn't be able to do these things to help New Yorkers. The other big thing that I work on, I told everyone, I'm a new mother. I still consider myself new. She's only 2 years old. And I've made it my job to make sure that we fix the the maternal mortality crisis in this state. And so when we think about that, we look at nationwide the fact that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth or due to pregnancy-related complications. Think about that. It is 2024, and just because of the way I look, I had a higher rate of possibly dying when I was trying to have the most joyful time of my life and give birth to my daughter 2 years ago. And here in New York, it's 5 times more likely to die for Black women. And so when I set my charge out, it was to change how New York State was dealing with this crisis. We have passed legislation that makes it easier to get a doula so that all doula care is covered by Medicaid. We're the 13th state to do it. But guess what? None of that happens if we don't have federal partners who understand what needs to happen. We have right now, VP Harris was put in charge of an entire maternal health task force to make sure that we are doing right by our Black mothers, especially, and our newborn babies. And the problem is, without the promise of that federal support, I would have never been able to pass these things here in New York. And so many states wouldn't be able to pass these things across the country. And so when we're thinking about a difference between a Harris presidency and a Trump presidency, we have to think about these things. We have to think about what the ripple effects will be for the ability of even our local and state elected officials to be efficient in their jobs, to be responsive to our needs. And we know that with a Harris presidency, we have actual accountability. With a Trump presidency, he has proven he doesn't care to be accountable to anyone. Even the laws and courts themselves, he's not accountable to. So to think that he would be accountable to us is delusional. When you think about the dreams that Harris has set forth and the promises she set forth, we don't have to go on dreams and promises. We can look at her plans of actual things that she's going to be putting into place, actual policy plans. And when we think about Trump, all we can see is the nightmare. And I think about the nightmare of how he finished his term. How he finished his term literally trying to overturn the democracy that we have all worked so hard to maintain and build in this country. And so I'm going to end with where I started, of being a second-generation Ethiopian. My father came here to Western New York in 1971, and the 2 things he's always told me about this country were the power of education and the power of our democratic government. And so as I sit in this position, I think about those 2 things. And I think about who is going to ensure that those 2 things are held above all else in this country, to protect our government and protect this democracy that we all work so hard to maintain, and to also make sure that our next generation gets the education that they deserve and are entitled to in this country. And that person is Kamala Harris. So I can't wait to elect our first female, first Black president. And what I know is, for me as a senator, that means I'll be able to also bring home all of the resources and help that I need to my own community. So thank you to our beautiful community. Thank you for all the support so many of you have given me since I took office in 2021. And I urge you to call your friends. There's nothing more powerful than you talking to someone you know. No matter how much money Kamala Harris raises, there is, and I tell you this as a candidate, there is nothing more powerful than hearing from someone you know and trust. So I encourage you all to call those people, even if you think they already voted, call them just in case in these next 10 days. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Senator Brouk. Your comments are so well received. Again, thank you for the leadership that you have provided to the residents of New York, but to all of us across the country, and this particular work you're doing in the mental health space. That's an area that is very important to our communities, not talked about enough, and a great segue actually into our next conversation on healthcare and mental health. So moving right along here, I am honored to bring to you folks from our community in the healthcare space who are going to talk to you about their work and their views and add some insights for us. So without further ado, I would like to invite, let's see here. This is gonna work.
We're already there, and Dr.
Oh, both.
Adiam is
Okay,
here.
perfect.
Yeah.
Dr. Adiam Goitom is an OBGYN. She's on the East Coast side there in the DMV, as well as Lila de Confirm Michael. She's a behavioral health nurse, community ambassador, and mental health advocate. Some of you have heard her speak before. This is a topic that a lot of us are talking about, but I will say we're very grateful to have you all talk about it in a more comprehensive way. A lot of us, to be honest, we're gonna put it out there, right? People are out here from our community that are only singularly focused on the issue of abortion, and we would love to explore the ways in which your everyday lives affect the opportunities, whether it's patient care and equity. There's a lot on the table. We heard Senator Brouk talk about mental health, the maternal mortality rate, right? Black women, which include our communities, are dying 2 to 3 times higher than their white counterparts. There's a lot that happens when you walk into an urgent care clinic or into a hospital. There are so many issues on the table here. And so I'm going to start with Dr. Goitom. My question for you is, in what ways are women's health and choices being attacked beyond abortion laws?
Thank you for having me. This is actually a very good question, because most of us think that when we are talking about laws that affect women's health, that the focus is usually just on abortion, but there's so much more that's happening. Like you said, I'm an OBGYN, which means I'm a doctor who takes care of girls and women, whether they're pregnant or not. And the healthcare laws being passed across the country are worrying me and many of my colleagues, including doctors in emergency rooms. These laws against abortion are vague and confusing, making it harder for doctors to treat pregnancy complications like miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, which are life-threatening cases where the pregnancy grows outside of the womb. Basically, doctors are afraid of getting in trouble, of being sued, losing their medical licenses, or even being imprisoned. This causes delays in care, even in emergencies, putting women's health and lives at risk. Fortunately, I live in a more liberal state, Maryland, but we hear from patients who travel to other states and struggle to get the care they need. Some even have to fly back home to Maryland in emergencies because of the pregnancy complications they encountered. And the doctors were not willing or able to take care of them because of the laws. So many low-income women, including immigrants and Black women, can't afford to travel to another state for care. So these laws affect these women the most, as they have fewer options. Also, the issue goes beyond just pregnancy care. Fertility treatments like IVF, which help people struggling to have children, are also being affected. This impacts both men and women and their chance to have families. Access to birth control is another important issue we should discuss. It helps people decide when they're ready to have children, which allows them to plan their lives, work, and finances. In some states, access to birth control is getting harder, and some employers don't have to cover it if it conflicts with their beliefs. Some doctors can also refuse to provide it. Additionally, some health centers are losing funding, making it harder for people to find affordable care nearby, especially those without insurance who rely on these clinics for cancer screening, birth control, infection testing, and even pregnancy care. And this impacts low-income and immigrant women disproportionately. So as you can see, this isn't just about abortion. It affects birth control, fertility treatments, and essential healthcare that many people rely on. It affects the care women get during pregnancy complications. This is why I'm speaking with you today as a doctor on the front lines who cares for all kinds of women, rich and poor, young and old, Black and white. When laws tie a doctor's hands, preventing us from giving the best care, it can lead to more complications and in some cases, even death. Everyone is affected, men and women, whether that's you, your wife, girlfriends, or daughter. For example, restrictions on birth control access can lead to more unplanned pregnancies, including teenage pregnancies, which place a burden on the whole family. Barriers to fertility treatments make it harder for people to start their families. So these laws have serious, far-reaching consequences. I urge you to think carefully about the leaders we choose and how their decisions impact our healthcare system and the futures of not only our daughters, but also our sons. And that's why I'm casting my vote for Kamala Harris.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goitom. We appreciate you for the work you did and the insights you just provided to us. I hope everyone heard that loud and clear. We're going to continue this conversation. I do want to shout out your daughter, who is part of our national campaign. You're never too young to get involved. She's the youngest in high school. She's been working just as hard as any one of us. And so we thank you for being such an amazing, person in our community, doctor, expert, mother, all of it. So shout out to you and your daughter, Noelle.
And thank you for all that you're doing, by the way. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Dr. Goitom. I'm going to invite two more panelists to the conversation here. And Lila Day, if we can pin her, Galila, as well. She's as here. Oh, you're there. Okay, great. Hopefully you all spotlighted. Okay, perfect. And hopefully also I'd like to bring Tizata Balacho on as well. Very happy to have them both here with us. As I mentioned, Lulade Kunfa-Mikael, she's a behavioral health nurse, community ambassador, mental health advocate. And then we're going to hear from Tizata Balacho, who is the founder of the B.I. Balanesh Foundation for Mental Health, created in honor of her son. So Lulade, I'm going to come to you, and Tizata, this question is for both of you. What's impacting Ethiopian and Eritrean women and girls the most? And what will happen if we continue down the path we are on now? And how will that impact our community, especially women and girls, but I would say everyone. So maybe Lulade, we can start with you. What's impacting our community the most when it comes to mental health?
Okay. Hi, everyone. It was an honor to be able to join this evening and listen to everyone's talking points. This is a very important discussion. The election is extremely close. I really just want to spend my talking minutes reflecting on the people in the community I've spoken to since you asked me to join the conversation. Okay. What affects the women, girls and the women in our community the most is I think there's a bit of an identity crisis when it comes to living in America, to be completely transparent. And I'd like to apologize in advance if anything I say offends anyone, but I think it's not about touching on people's feelings, but being honest and being transparent. There are a lot of people that are deciding just to check out and not even vote at all because they're that disgruntled and frustrated and they feel like their vote isn't going to make a difference. So they've opted to just sit back and wait to see what happens. I think to look at the biggest issue for me, being born in America, but being a proud Ethiopian and Eritreans have to understand, when we are seen on the big picture, we're not seen as kings and queens or of royal descent, where we're different. We are seen as Black people, Black girls and boys, Black women and men. And I think we separate ourselves from the African-American community. And if you ask me what's our biggest challenge, it is that, our identity crisis living in America. Because whatever happens, good or bad, to the African-American community is going to happen to us. If their rights are not respected, neither will ours. When we talk about mental health, when we talk about because I'm a nurse as well, as far as healthcare workers, I'm in the same poll. When I was listening to Dr. Adiam, I was going down memory lane. I don't even have to go too far down. A week ago, with my own health issues, I was in the emergency room. I was there for over 6.5 hours, and my chief complaint, one of my chief complaints was pain and discomfort. I was never offered pain meds, not even a Tylenol. So I would like to pose your question with another question for anyone that is willing to answer it. What do we tell are young people. And I believe it's their vote that's going to make the difference in this election. The people that decide to be too lazy to care to go and vote. What do we tell them when they say they're already not seen? They already feel unheard. When they go to the emergency room, they're not getting the care they deserve. They haven't had a gynecological exam or pap smear in years, or when they do go with any issues, the first thing they offer before any preventative care are hysterectomies, or getting on some kind of medication that will cause other side effects so they can't give birth. Or my girlfriends who I've had to bury because they lost their lives trying to have their first children at the age of 30 and 32 and 36 most recently. What do you tell those people that feel like it's not going to matter one way or another, whomever they vote for? For me, the big thing is policy, yes, but do you want someone in the White House who doesn't even see you as a human, who doesn't even see you as equal? If you ask me, Ato Burtukan can't make it back into the White House. And what are we going to do collectively? What are we prepared to do to, we're literally convincing the masses what is the sane candidate to vote for. And I need your help in that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Lila. It's tough work, and you and I have had conversations about our communities in particular, right? And this is and not just on election day, right? But like our communities are still here with the same issues, the same problems, right? Parents and aunts and sisters, brothers dealing with mental health issues, from depression and suicide to alcoholism and drug addiction. It's a very real thing, and because of it's something that we're not used to talking about publicly. And I think you've been one of the strongest advocates we've heard from, and I really commend you on the work you're doing. Thank you for taking time to share your story. But I hope it's a reminder to us all that these, we're here to gather the vote, right, for Harris to be our next president, but we also are here to vote for ourselves and our communities, and make sure that before and after the election, we're doing this work, right? And we're not stopping. But it's important to understand really just where our communities are. So thank you for that. I want to turn it over to Tizatava Lacho, if we can pin her on the screen. Again, she's the heart and soul of, okay, great. Sorry, guys, if you can't, I only see one person, but if you all see her, that's what's important. Yes. She's the heart and soul of our community. Many of us know her. And I really want to first just may God bless you for all that you've been through with your family. I knew your son very well. I still remember this day, lifting him up when he was his high school senior. Incredible young man, and from everything in academics to sports, he was a leader in our community. And for those of you who were around, years ago when Bia was a high school senior, the Society of Ethiopians established in the Diaspora honored him because he was such a tremendous asset to our community and inspiration to so many young people. And he hadn't even graduated. I mean, he had just graduated high school. So I want to turn it over to Tizata, because I think you are a manifestation of where we need to be on these issues, and the fact that you've committed your life to lifting up your own son in this way. We all need to know about the work you're doing. We need to know about Bia's life, but we also need to know about people like you who step up and are using your voice and your opportunity, right, to lift up your son in this way, so that we all can be better for it, stronger for understanding how mental health affects us. So I just want to turn it over to you for any comments. And I know you, by the way, she is in the middle of a huge, wedding celebration, and I think it says a lot that you are making time for this conversation. So thank you so much. Over to you.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you so much, Manna, Galila, all organizers and participants. It's really an honor for me to be here. I know I am the oldest among you, but I know less about health. I am not a trained health professional. I'm a journalist by training and I have retired. But at the same time, mental health knocked on my door, really knocked on my door and took the most precious person in our family, the smartest, the kindest, the most humble, the talented. And we saw his struggle. We struggled with him at the same time, but we lost the battle. And through it all, also, we knew how addiction and mental health is ravaging our community, especially the young and the brightest. And we also learned about the stigma around mental health, not just in our community, but in the larger, American, community. There is a stigma and there is misunderstanding around mental health. And those who are victim of mental health suffer the most, because my son really suffered. And, they are considered criminals, they are harassed, they are mistreated. And of course, what do you expect when one is robbed of his thinking ability? They cannot think for themselves. They cannot take medication on their own. Anyway, they need care, they need support, and that's what's lacking in our community. And what is preventing that to happen for the most in Ethiopian and Eritrean community is our ignorance about mental illness. Some describe it as devil's work, or somebody put some kind of evil medication, some kind of evil spirit on the loved ones. No, it is a serious, my son was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and then mania, and then schizophrenia, all kinds of things. So what we're trying to do is be transparent, and talk about our own story, how we dealt with, and with the process. Of course, it took us time to learn what it is that affected Bia, because this upright, bright, athletic, energetic kid, became really totally depressed. We didn't know what had, and I knew nothing about mental illness. I had to educate myself about mental illness. At the same time, I had to educate about myself on how to care for him and manage his medication. But anyway, our struggle is that no Ethiopian mother or no Eritrean mother, no mother should go through that, and no son, no child should go through mental illness. So we share our resources. We have a website. We have built a resource for Eritrean and Ethiopian mental health providers on our website. We try to, share information with the media as often as we can. And also we participate in community gatherings as this one. And also there are times, when parents approach us individually, we try to, keep the secret as they want it, and we connect them with mental health professionals. So I hope I have answered your question. But what worries me about this election is, remember the last time President, what's his name? President Trump was in power, he was really keen on getting rid of Obamacare, healthcare. Former President Trump now did not provide us with new healthcare. He doesn't have one. But again, if he takes power, I know for sure he's going to get rid of that healthcare. He's going to kill it. The first thing, I think. So what worries me the most is that, even, the very small help we're getting from the community, from counties, from local health professionals is going to disappear. So when we need the most, we're going to have, we're going to face the challenge of proper treatment for our loved ones. So with that, I will leave you, and we hope that will not ever happen to us.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tizata. We really appreciate you. I do want to encourage everyone on the call, if you want to find out more, she's spent a lot of time organizing resources for our community. So you can just Google Bia Balainesh Foundation for Mental Health.
Yeah, it's BBF. I'm sorry, I can share the bbfmentalhealth.org.
Yes, we can drop it in the chat as well. Yeah, thank you so much. We will be in touch soon with all of you. Thank you so much to Lila Day as well, and Dr. Goitom, Ariam Goitom. Thank you so much for the work you do every day and for lifting up all of the issues we care about. It's not, we are all dealing with so much. I mean, you might hear people talk about, it is true, right? When we talk about affordable healthcare, it's access and ability to really address all of these issues. But I think what's important about this conversation is really, kind of just having the conversation and not being ashamed of it, but actually addressing it. And so I appreciate you guys for that. Thank you so much to Zata and for making time and also lifting up your son. We really, really appreciate those of us who are blessed to know him and experience him. We know that his spirit lives on through you. So thank you for the good work that you've done. Lula de Confirmikiel, you're a boss. Continue to be an advocate for us, and we will find out ways to connect with you for anyone wanting to learn more about what they can do. There's a lot of resources for our community, as well as Dr. Adiam for being in the hospital room and taking care of our precious Ethiopian and Eritrean women and girls. Thank you for all that you do and for highlighting all of the issues that matter to make sure that we have equity in healthcare and ability to get the services we need. So I'm going to close the conversation here. Thank you so much. And we're going to transition to education and the economy. But
we have our panelists up. So we have the guests for our economy and education panel, and they're all here with us and ready for you, Mena.
All right, awesome. So let me also, while we transition here, I also want to mention our website. For those of you who want to go to www.habeshasforharris.com, we do have information there on several policy issues. We focus on mental health a lot today because that matters, but it is the case that Kamala Harris supports resources for women, infant, and children, making sure affordable health care is sustained, opportunities to increase in mental health services, lower prescription drug costs. These things matter for our community, for our elderly community as well. And so with that, we're going to transition to our next discussion with these fabulous gentlemen here. Again, I'm sure you all know them well and appreciate them for joining us for this next segment. We're joined by Awati Yasu, former city councilman representing DeKalb County in Georgia, and he has now been elected to, he has been elected and will start his service in January to the Board of Education. I believe you are also the first. So, props to you for showing us a path that we can follow and for representing our community. Mike and Dala, like everywhere at the same time, tech entrepreneur, co-founder of Ethiopians for Obama. He's done so much, and we really appreciate him. He's part of our national campaign as well. And then also Bert Bayou, who is vice president of Unite Local 23, focused on workers' rights, also part of our national campaign. He and his colleagues, he's a big part of helping our phone banking initiative as well. So these folks are on the front lines of education and economic opportunity. You have heard it when elections come, everybody says it's the economy, it's the economy. So let's break that down in terms of what that really means for our communities. Because, we, again, might be thinking about one or two issues, but we are talking about the everyday lives of our people getting from point A to point B, paying their kids' college tuition. And we're thinking about loan reimbursement, and we know the benefits we received under the Biden administration for loan reimbursement. But, cost of living is on the rise. I want to start with I still going to call you Councilman Iyasu, because you have been focused on so many issues in Atlanta in particular, right? You have presided over a number of issues that have to deal with the education economy. What does that look like at a local level? And, tell us more about why Harris would be a better choice for our community.
Thank you so much. I first want to thank you for coordinating this, and it's such a pleasure to share this platform among these great leaders. I'm really honored to be among you today. My name is Awad Iyasu. I have served as a city council member here in our town called Clarkston in DeKalb County for 8+ years. And in last May, I got elected to DeKalb County Board of Education, and I'll be starting my tenure in January. It was back in 2017 when I was in my second year of city council tenure that we have had the election of the former president. I don't even want to say his name. We had, such a dramatic change from the time when President Obama was serving. And as some of you might know it, our small town called Clarkston is extremely diverse and a hub of refugees. And one of the biggest represented communities includes Ethiopians, Eritreans, Somalians, and overall East Africans. We are heavily represented here, and some of the policies that obviously affected us immediately included the whole reduction in terms of refugee resettlement from 85,000, I believe, when President Obama was in office the last year, to 15,000. So we need to think about the impacts of having presidency under Trump. We've already seen this movie before, so we don't really have to even say he might do it. Well, he already have done certain things. It's not might. He already did reduce the number of refugees that used to be resettled here in Clarkston. Obviously, at that time also, he did the Muslim ban, which directly impacted the Sudanese community, and eventually Eritreans were added. That means our families were not able to be reunited and had to be separated while he was in office. That means that this was really a daily based drama that we've seen for 4 years while he was in office. So we really don't want to go back there. And just like Madam Vice President said we do not want to go back there, and our Eritrean and Ethiopian communities cannot forget the whole 4 years he was in office, calling us names, our countries, saying that he would like to see Egypt blow up a dam that's been built by Ethiopia. I can go on and on. I don't know how long. I mean, we don't really have the whole day to speak about all this. So everything was affecting our community. Our community was always under stress. What is going to happen next? What is going to come next? And obviously, we had people were concerned about getting deported. And now he's saying he's going to have massive deportation. And especially to those who are not U.S. citizens, that really is going to affect our communities who are not U.S. citizens right now. That might put us in danger. And he's even talking about prosecuting U.S. native-born Americans who have been elected officials. So if he's thinking about doing that to you native-born Americans, imagine what he's going to do to our communities, what he would love to do to our communities. So we don't really want to go back there. And now I want to speak about more about education, especially in our community here in DeKalb County. So education doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything that as a policy, everything that the administration does is going to impact our children. So a lot was said. I think I just want to tie it together. So many great people have already spoken about the impacts of racism. When others view our children, they don't know if they're Ethiopian or Eritrean or Somalian. All they see is Black kids. And we are in the same category when it comes to the receiving end of racism. So having people like, having the former president come back, this will empower the racist elements in this country. And we don't want to see that. We want our communities to be empowered, that our community belongs to this country as well. And our children should not feel any kind of form of racism, because a lot of them, they are actually born in this country. And they haven't even been to our home country of Eritrea or Ethiopia. So this is their home. So we need to think about our children and the impact that this election is going to have on them, on our great-grandchildren, and all of our descendants in the future. One of the things we've heard about Project 2025 is elimination of Department of Education, which means for me as a member of Board of Education, that's less funding coming to our district. We want more money. We don't want less money. Our communities need more support. We're not asking for less support. So our communities need, please think about the impacts. We may not agree on everything, but we know who is going to be advocating for our children's education. And that's going to be our next president, Kamala Harris, not the other guy. So we definitely need to think about, of course, about opportunities for higher education. He doesn't have any plan for financial aid or anything that's gonna help higher education. And
let me pause there for a moment, because stay on with us, because we're going to come back to that. I want to bring Mike into the conversation here, because you're touching on some of the things he spoke to. We had a community gathering in Virginia. You know, folks are nervous, right? Interest rates for home buying is high, inflation. You know, Mike, I mean, talk to us about, like, you personally, how do you feel about the economy? What's on the table when you think about, you know, what you're going to take with you to the ballot box? Because I'm sure what you're thinking is what a lot of our community is thinking. So any comments in reaction to what the councilman said, and anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think what I would say is a lot of it is I agree with, and so I approach this election from purely an economic point of view, right? And there's a very important statistics that President Clinton did during the DNC convention, where he said over the last 40 years, since the 1980s, there were Democratic and Republican presidents. The Democratic, president, or the economy under the Democratic presidents, created 50 million jobs, and the Republican created 1 million jobs. That if you're a data-driven person, this is about as stark of a choice as you can imagine. So if you set everything to the side, right? The fact that I always consider former President Trump as a merchant of chaos. That's where he thrives. And truth to be told, if you even ignore all of that chaos that comes with it as a package, looking at it from purely economical point of view, there would be more money under a Democratic president, even with inflation, that you would have more money in your pocket than you would with a Republican president. This is a fact, this is data driven, and you can go back and look at the data. So as a small business owner, one of the things that I'm super motivated by, and the reason why I'm casting my vote for the future President Kamala Harris, is because we want predictability in the economy. So the most important part of a small business is to actually have some stability on how to think about the future. Otherwise, it would become a very chaotic process, and you cannot predict what comes, down the street. And this type of boom and bust cycle that former President Trump was doing in the 4 years that he was in the office, and for all the economic credit that he gets, what people most often forget is he inherited one of the most performing economies amongst the G7 countries from President Obama. And all he did throughout his presidency is just that one tax cut that he gave to his friends. So I want the next 4 years to be productive for small businesses. The President Biden's plans have issued more small business loans than any other president on record. Since 2020, the number of small business loans doubled, right? So all of these things would add up to a more thriving economy, right? Wages are growing. I know, I completely understand that people are not feeling it right now because of inflation, but the inflation does not happen because of Democrats. The inflation happened because of the short supply side that happened during the COVID years. So it's being worked out. All the policies that the Democratic Party, especially President Biden, deserves a ton of credit here. And Vice President Harris helped move some of these bills as being a tie-breaking vote in the Senate, that I think the next 4 years we're going to reap the benefit of all the work that was done over the last 4. So what I tell that my friends, my colleagues, my countrymen, people in Eritrea and Eastern Africa bloc is stay the course. We're in a trajectory that we're coming out of the COVID years with more wind behind our back, especially for the economy, even though it doesn't feel like this. And while there are a bunch of structural issues that we need to take care of, the economy in the US is the envy of the world. And even though you don't feel it right now, but it is true that it's showing up in the numbers. And give it time, and this is going to be the right course. And remember, if there is one thing on the economy side you need motivation to vote on, under Democratic presidents in the last 30 years, 50 million jobs were created. Under a Republican presidents in the last 50 years, including Reagan, 1 million jobs in total. That's the thing that you should take to the ballot, in my opinion. So if you're a small business owner, or if you know anybody who's interested about economics, that's the data point that you should tell them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Back to you, Mena.
Thank you for the perspective. Data is important. And we know from the plans that Harris, and as we transition to Bert, who's been on the front lines of workers' rights, right? I mean, we're talking about integration and assimilation. It's not just getting your kids to school and learning English. It's also not being discriminated against when you're in the job place. But to Mike's point around small business growth too, we know that Harris will offer $50,000 tax credit for to support underrepresented entrepreneurs. And when we think about tax relief in the middle class, that's us, right? We are actually, I mean, even though we are among the highest foreign-born educated population, it doesn't necessarily mean our net worth is up there in, either, right? Most of us as Ethiopian and Eritrean Americans are in the middle class, and under Harris, no one earning less than $400,000 will have to pay any more in taxes. There's a child earned income tax credit. And Mike just spoke to the issue of the ways in which small business has, again, a lot of us in the small business space too. So I think a lot of this conversation is to move away from the abstract and know that we're talking about you. So when you hear these conversations happening, where do you line up? Because we're part of this community. And so when you go to the ballot box, don't think in the abstract, think about the things that matter for your business when you open up and close your doors every day, when you are reaching for another loan, when you're looking for a house and want to refinance, when April comes along and you're filling out your taxes and you want to have a family and you want to know how you can pay for it all. Like really think about where we are as a community. And I think these will resonate and take that with you to go vote. Over to Bert Bayou. You've been you really on the front lines. I want to really give you a lot of credit. Known you for a very long time when, quite frankly, we've talked even about folks in our community. Everyone should know, right? One of the highest ranking members of the AFL-CIO was Ethiopian, Tafari Gabre. I don't know how many of you know that, but he was an incredible national leader of the AFL-CIO for many years. And was often talking about how so many different demographic groups would come to him, asking, what can we do here? What can we do here? And he said, well, I was looking for my community to come to me. So a lot of this is also sharing knowledge, knowing where we are, but also understanding, right? Those of you living in the DMV, a lot of our people are working in the parking lots at the airport, riding taxi drivers, chauffeurs. We're also doctors, lawyers, and all those good things we talk about all the time, right? But we're also in the service sector industry, at hotels. We're trying to make a living. We're in the sharing economy. What are we making? How are we being treated? Is there anywhere for advancement? And as you know, remember, we are among the highest foreign-born educated population. So when you step into a taxi car, talk to the driver, because he probably already has a bachelor's degree. He probably had he or she had an amazing job back home, right? But they, to sacrifice for the family, have come here and taken, whatever entry-level position they could get, right? Where's the opportunity for growth there? And that ties us back to immigration and equity in the workforce. So Bert, talk to us about the lay of the land with the work you do every day, where most of our communities are when it comes to the economy. We're talking about jobs. So what's the lay of the land look like there? And what should we know about it?
Thank you so much, Manna. Yes, I've been a labor organizer for 17 years here in the DC area, and I'm the vice president of Unite Here Local 23, which is the union of service and food service and other service workers, which means most of the employees that we organize are Ethiopians and Eritreans. And it's like, I remember when I first started, when, most people were making $8 an hour. That was the prevailing wage for all workers. We were really struggling, and we fight with employers, obviously, to increase wages, to make benefits better. But what really propelled workers' wages was minimum wage increases. And those kind of changes came because the union focused on making sure the right people are in office, whether it's locally in the DC government or in the state offices in Virginia, in Maryland, and even the White House. So one example that I want to give is organizing airport workers here in the DC area. About 90% of these workers, both at Reagan and Dallas Airport, are Ethiopians. And when we first started organizing in 2015-16, Most of them were working 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. Like, they start their day at 4 o'clock in the morning with, maybe opening a Starbucks at the airport, working until midday, and then going to another job in the same airport to go to do another job. That's like a majority of our community's life. And I remember talking to some workers, as they were leaving late at night from their jobs at 10, 11 o'clock. Some of them said, I don't even see my kid for a week because I work from early morning until last night. Like, I don't see them for a week. I only see them on my day off. And it really broke my heart. And I think, what I'm saying this is because back then workers were making $8 an hour, and the airport workers campaign was determined on raising the minimum wage for all airport workers. And the airport is very complicated. It's run by the federal government, which is because the White House has like 2 board members on the seat. Virginia has 7 board members. Maryland has 4. It's all these board members are running. So we had to make sure that we do a lot of political work and making sure we put the right people in office, both in Virginia, DC, and Maryland, including the White House, to win wage increases. And back then, when then President Obama's public engagement officer, actually an Ethiopian, Yohannes Abraham, came to the airport workers campaign and said, like, we back you, will support you. And they did all the work behind the scenes, moving DC, moving Maryland, moving Virginia. And as a result, we were able to win minimum wage raises. Now, minimum wage today is $16 an hour. It's like double what it was back then. And I'm saying all this because if we didn't have the right people in office, which are usually Democrats, and when Virginia had like a Republican governor in the past few years, it took us back. The people that he appointed to the airport board were anti-worker, anti-immigrants, and they fought us. They fought us every step of the way. And we made this campaign not just about workers. We made this about Ethiopian and Eritrean immigrants because it's also a community that's been held behind by these airports. These airports hire more Ethiopians outside of Ethiopia, in our opinion. And this is like a community matter. This is a community issue. And all the elected officials in Maryland, Virginia, with the White House, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have one. And I can say the same about the DC minimum wage increases, which is around the same thing. So what that means is like we're raising the bottom. That's what politicians do for us, right? Like we raise the bottom. That doesn't mean our union members make 16. They make more because when you get a union, like, you get more wage increases, you get better benefits. But like these elected officials, the government, the governors, who run these places raise the minimum wage for us, which means like we can now, we have workers now who are making $20 an hour. So what I'm trying to say is the majority of our workers, our community, even though we're educated, we still are, a lot of us are in these low wage jobs, in service sector jobs, hotels, service industry. And if we don't have people in office like that, we will go back to where we were before, because that's what Trump wants to do. His Project 2025 is very clear. The first thing he wants to do is bust the unions. He wants to allow employers to fire workers who are organizing a union. He wants to make that legal. It's on the book there, right? He wants employers, bosses, to form their own union, which means like you will have a company union. Of course, it's going to be a joke,
It's so crazy.
And the last thing I want to say, man, I'm sorry, but overtime pay. Right now, because of Biden's administration, employees who make about $43 in January, who make almost $60,000, are entitled for overtime pay. He said that's the first thing he's gonna get, and like those workers are gonna be working 60 hours a week and not get paid. So there's a lot at stake for our community.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I really hope everyone heard the specifics of what was just shared, because that's where our community is, right? And so when we talk about economy, we're talking about the businesses that Mike is speaking of, and he's a business owner as well. We're talking about the communities that Councilman Aotiyasu, who's now going to be on the school board of education, is talking about, and we are talking about these everyday issues that affect our community. You know, our democracy is not a joke, right? And so, you know, this is a very critical election, and we actually know what the differences are, right? I mean, Trump has said it, and he is coming to the table with an idea of abusing executive privilege to get the job done. I mean, the thought of the normalization for us to sit here and say that having bosses be able to unionize and eliminate them for workers, that's not normal. And it's not the path of democracy, right? And so I think we all need to just really know that we are empowered because we have people like Bert and Mike and the councilman, right, on the front lines of this work. You know, this campaign is also about supporting us, right? It's the down ballot races. I don't know how many of you know that in the state of Florida, we have the first Ethiopian American district court judge, Nina Ashannafi Richardson. We're out here, right? And I mean, we're also carrying our burdens, our opportunities, our communities with us to the positions that we have in leadership. That's why it's so important, right? You know, Aotiyasu is also the first Eritrean American in his position in Georgia. And we have a member of Congress, Joe Neguse, who we also invited. He wasn't able to make it, but of course, we now have a congressman who represents, someone descriptively represents our community. And I think it's important that we step up and learn. And it's okay to disagree. That's the other thing, right? We are here because we care about you, no matter what your opinions are. I've talked to people all over. And, you know, they'll say, oh, I feel this way about that. That's okay, right? We've been doing phone banking. Anyone who wants to get involved while we wrap up this conversation, go to our website. We've been having awesome conversations with people with different points of view. And I always tend to ask, you know, by the way, is the Republican Party reaching out to you? No, but you're planning to vote for them, right? So just know that we welcome the diversity of opinions, but we also know where our communities are, and we know the issues that matter. Right? It is those 9-to-5 jobs in the service sector industry. It is the middle class, because that's where we mostly are, right? You know, it is, you know, thinking about immigration policy. Whether we were born here, we all can relate to somebody in our family we're trying to help get a visa, you know, diversity visas, temporary protected status, right? There's conflict and war happening in our home countries across the globe, in Israel, Palestine, you know, but at the same time, you know, we want to make sure that our immigration policy is robust enough to be there, you know, for us. And it's okay to hold these opinions. Actually, we're not asking you to, you know, change your opinion overnight, but to understand that if you actually look at the full spectrum of what's on the table and you ask yourselves every day what matters, you'll find that we are on the party of safety, security, protection, empowerment, economic and educational opportunity. And that's why we're all here, right? We're all here because we care about all of you. So I want to thank this great panel, and I'll turn it over to the councilman for very brief remarks. We want to end on time. We have 1 minute left, and we have a call to action. So if you want to learn more, let me just say, go to www.abeshasforharris.com. I'm going to bring Lila back as we close out. We are going to walk you through the next steps here, because we still need your help, and we also want you to get out the vote. So very briefly, over to you, Councilman.
Thank you. I just want to quickly say I totally agree with what Bert was saying. So when we have families working 2 jobs, that means less hours that they're helping their children's education. When people don't have health care, that means children who are going to get sick, and then they're going to make other children sick. When children don't have, when families don't have reproductive rights, heaven forbid, that means teenager pregnancy that will have to drop out from school. So all these things go hand in hand. So please don't think about it isolated way, and let's vote. I already voted, me and my wife, we already voted for Harris. And please make sure you vote. because this is going to make a difference in our children's family. And more than all, I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I want to see them to be able to say, when I grow up, well, one of them is already grown. She's already a sophomore in college, but I want them to be able to say, I might become a president as well. And above all, she does look like Habesha. She look like us. So I hope she'll be our president. Thank you.
There you go. I mean, there you go. Thank you for those words. I'm going to turn it over to Galila, and I want to thank everyone on the call. I think a lot of this is about demonstrating that we are no different than you. We are a group of colleagues, friends, folks who just want to organize, right? And came together to create space for you to have your voice heard. So again, go to www.abeshasforharris.com. Galila has some more insights. We're trying to reach our 10,000 goal. We're almost there. So please go to the page. We actually have a unique Razor code. So folks who may not know, we are officially registered with the campaign under Ethiopian and Eritrean Americans for Kamala Harris, which means that all of the donations go to the Victory Fund. But if you donate through our page, then you will actually be donating into our category. And so the campaign will know that the sort of amount of influence we have there. So, we are, if you want a phone bank, reach out to us, because we're going to go for one last strong week. And if you just want to be involved in the future, you can come back to us. So Galila, over to you to run through this again.
Hello, everyone. This is our call to action. One, thank you for staying with us for 2 hours. I see we have about the same amount of people that started with us, and we really appreciate your engagement. We're looking at the chats, and we're really excited that this was very beneficial for you and the people that you brought to us. So as I put in the chat, please check out our habeshasforharris.com website. A lot of the policy issues that people focused on today is captured there. So if you need talking points, or if people are still undecided in your family and friend circle, please, revert to that information and vote early. I already voted. A lot of the panelists, avoid the long lines, right? Avoid the stress, just knock it out. And if you need to know what location, go to www.vote.org. So that's shown here as number 1. Number 2, as Mena just mentioned, we have a dedicated link, right? So everyone says you probably get bombarded with calls and emails, donate, right? Which is great, but where you really want to donate is with us, because it's going to show, as the Habesha community, this is what we've raised as a team, right? And that will be directly linked to the Kamala Harris's national campaign. So that's why it's really, really important that you donate to this specific link that we have on our website tied to the campaign. We've done phenomenally well phone banking thousands of targeted Habesha people in battleground states, and we plan to continue to do so in Georgia and Nevada. We can't be just too comfortable, right? It's a tight race. So if you're interested and you have the energy, please either reach out to us directly at the Contact Us page at habeshaforharris@gmail.com, or you can send me a direct link here. Pretty much any way that you want to help, we would gladly appreciate that. And then 4th, this is kind of like the fun, the photos, the videos. Follow us on our socials. We've been featured on Jira TV and a couple other radio stations. And so if you want to hear more, or if you want to have a different types of panelists to discuss things, like we have Dr. Kiddist on that panel, feel free to go to Habeshas for Harris, and you'll see some of the other things that we have there. So we hope that this was enjoyable and you learned some things, and keep engaged with us. We plan to do things, I think, beyond just the election. So if you want to be a part of this movement, not just for Kamala Harris, but for us, our people, right? I see you guys chatting. You're proud of this organizing and the leaders and the energy. And so we want you. We need you. It's a small group of us. And so I just hope that you can be a part of it. Thank you, Mena.
Thank you, Galila, for that. Again, I want to thank all of our speakers today and all of you who joined us. The moment is now. Take this with you. I mean, a lot of times we're preaching to the choir when we do these things. So there's probably 1, 10, 20 other people that you're in conversation with that are still leaning, maybe right, not sure if they're going to vote, right? I think upset about a single issue that they care a lot about. that's okay, but tell them what you learned today, what you already know. Give them our website. We're still going to be here after elections. I mean, you're hearing from people who have been dedicated to the issues that matter for our community beyond the election. But I think we all need to kind of take a moment to understand just how important this election is for our communities. So with that, we will close. Thank you so much. We will provide more opportunity to reshare this widely, but appreciate all the hard work. If you're a phone banker on this call, thank you. You've spent hours of your time calling thousands of voters in Georgia and Nevada, and we thank you for being part of history as well, being able to call our households, our communities, and have nuanced conversations that other people are not having, right? And so again, thank you to our elected officials, Awat Yasu, State Senator Samra, Brouk. We appreciate everything that they've done, and thank you for joining us. And to all of our speakers and all of our national campaign directors and co-directors, you can see their beautiful faces on our website. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because it doesn't take a lot. There's strength in numbers. If you want to get the job done, turn to our community. We'll show you how to do it. So thank you, and see you on November 5th and on the 6th, where we'll have history again, an opportunity to make our lives better for our community. Take care, guys.